Freedom is the right to tell what they do not want to hear. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News. Tired of the same repetitive government narratives? Then wave goodbye to the distractions and rhetoric of corporate media. For this is Anti-Media Radio.
But I want to get the language right. The big government is in trouble.
You're all a bunch of slaves! Bunch of slaves!
What we need in the United States is not violence and lawlessness, but is love and wisdom and compassion toward one another.
What's your definition of media?
And now, here's your host, S.M. Gibson.
It is June the 16th, 2015, and my name is S.M. Gibson, and this is Anti-Media Radio. We're here to give you an alternative to the corporate media's agenda. Going to go ahead and start out real quick. There have been 522 Americans killed by police officers this year in 2015. There have been 55 police officers that have died in the line of duty. Only 14 of those have died by gunfire. We have also had, in the city of Chicago, with their wonderful laws of gun control that work so well and should be a model for the rest of the country, we've seen 1,133 people shot with gun control laws this year. 195 homicides. And the stat of the night, Saudi Arabia has beheaded 100 people so far this year. Last year it was 87. It's June now, and they're already at 100. So they far surpassed last year's total. As always, I'm joined in the studio tonight with our wonderful producer, Mr. Shannon Madden. Shannon, how you doing?
Good evening, everybody. I'm doing absolutely just crappy, just thinking about and all of the things that we have to talk about tonight that are absolutely not necessary for us to live in a free society or free anything. Freedom Act. Just an act, y'all.
And that's the thing. They want to act like you've got some freedom, and unfortunately, that's not really the way things are right now. I want to read everybody this quote. We've got it right now up on the Facebook page. It was a quote by General Smedley Butler. For those of you who don't know who he is, I highly suggest you go out and study about him. He wrote a book called War is a Racket. But the quote is, and again, this is a United States general, our boys were sent off to die with beautiful ideals painted in front of them. No one told them that dollars and cents were the real reason they were marching off to kill and die. And this is a quote by a man that passed away in 1940. It's not like this was said 2 weeks ago or this was said about the Iraq War. This is how this has always been, Shannon. It's always been this way. And yet we still haven't learned from our mistakes. And, that takes us back. Every episode, I give the beheading stat to Saudi Arabia, but they've hit 100, and we've got a story up on the antimedia.org right now, and it's starting to gain some traction. People are reading it, and I think that's a good thing. People are seeing, what our country is endorsing, basically. While at the same time, when ISIS beheads people, we have to go bomb these people. And that's not to say, well, it's okay if ISIS does it. No, of course it's not okay. But what I don't understand is why is it not okay when ISIS does it, But when Saudi Arabia does it, that's just fine and dandy. There's not a problem there. We're going to support you in whatever wars you have. We're going to have essay contests when your leaders die. We're going to ship you weapons. We're going to just reward you, basically, for all the crimes that you do, even though we say we're against all these crimes. Saudi Arabia is one of the 10 countries on the planet that has been ruled as being completely not free from human rights organizations. Only 10. We're including North Korea in that stat. Now, if Kim Jong-un passed away, okay, would we be running essay contests about what a great man he was, or would we be talking about all his human rights violations? But when it's Saudi Arabia, we look the other way. We allow it. And what's the difference between North Korea and Saudi Arabia?
Well, North Korea didn't supply 15 of the hijacker bombers from 9/11. Saudi Arabia did.
And they're also not sitting on a bunch of oil either. And that's the hypocrisy that we're living in, is that we attack Saudi Arabia's enemies. For anybody that doesn't know the history, Saudi Arabia and Iran have a very I don't know the exact word I'm looking for here, but they have a very colorful history with each other.
They're not Facebook friends. But
they are not Facebook friends. They have de-Facebooked each other. And
de-friended. No, they probably blocked each other, like Israel and Palestine.
Exactly. And yet, we go after Saudi Arabia's enemies, even though Saudi Arabia is the epitome of all this human rights garbage that we spew on about and say, oh, this is the worst thing ever, that's the worst thing ever. We have to liberate this country. We have to liberate this country. We're talking about a country that is comparable to North Korea in freedoms. And we're not talking about liberating them. We're talking about giving them high fives and sending them to Crawford, Texas, and holding hands together. And I don't understand how America, the United States, and even, there's 535 people in Congress. At the end of the day, it's not that many people to buy off, I guess. But how is somebody not standing up and saying, give me a break? What a charade this is.
Well, and we're seeing it more and more throughout the country. I think the most telling statistic is the number of Americans that have completely checked out of the whole political system, that are not going to the voting polls, that really could care less, right or left, who's running. Whenever there is a candidate that that's on the fringe, that is actually speaking about a lot of the things that we hold so dear on this show, that Anti-Media holds dear on their site, and all of our listeners hold dear. And our listeners and our and Anti-Media's followers are growing daily. I wonder why that is.
People are fed up.
Absolutely.
People are fed up. They're tired of being lied to. But you talked about having a candidate, and we talk about this a lot on the show, but it's just like, we need to lead ourselves, We need to stop choosing from two people that are completely bought and paid for. It's in the article from earlier, and this is, whether it's in the article or not, it's just widely known facts. We're talking about, a lot of people are suggesting that it's going to be Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton, okay? In 2016, become the next president of the United States. Well, the Bush family is so in bed with the Saudi royal family and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and that's well-known fact of the ties that the Bushes have. We're also talking about the Clinton Foundation that's taken anywhere from $10 million to $25 million from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
So wait a minute, you're telling me the Republicans and the Democrats are both being bought and sold?
Can you believe it? Can you imagine
Wow.
that maybe it's just feasible that both sides have been bought and paid for by the exact same entities, and it doesn't matter which side you vote for, is you're going to get the same exact policies because they are serving the exact same interest groups?
And that's why we have millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of American citizens that have completely checked out of both of that. Out of the whole entire little Republican Democratic Party situation. And there's nobody left in the middle that can seriously run against these candidates because they're so well funded, so well connected. We're not just talking about business owners from around the country. We're talking about all over the planet, bought and sold.
Right. Just the same with Saudi Arabia. It goes back to Okay, in 1995, Saudi Arabia executed 192 people when Clinton was in office, but he's been happy. His foundations have been happy to take their millions upon millions of dollars. We weren't attacking this country. It was never suggested that we attack this country. In fact, when Iraq attacked this country, well, I shouldn't say attack, they invaded Kuwait with under the guise of they were going to eventually go into Saudi Arabia. We jumped up real fast and we're over there in no time to take out Saddam Hussein.
It's funny how that works.
And it's funny, too, how we're sitting here and we talk about ISIS and about how they're beheading people and they're so horrible, and our response is, well, we need to attack Iraq over this. Okay, but it's also funny when there's 15 and 19 hijackers and it takes out, that's what we're told from their official story. They say there's 15, 19 hijackers are Saudi Arabian, they brought down the towers, and we won't get into any other side of the story. Let's just take their official story, what they told the American people. And there's these 15 Saudi guys did this. And what was the response to that? Let's attack Iraq. That's
Absolutely.
Always the response.
Absolutely.
Let's attack Saudi Arabia's enemies because we're telling you these Saudi guys did this, so we're going to go attack Saudi Arabia's enemies. And everybody's like, that sounds pretty good. They've got weapons over there. I mean, we know that they were hiding in Afghanistan. That sounds pretty good. Let's just go with that.
Well, it's funny you bring that story up because there's now a new story brewing right now about a lawsuit against our former president, G.W. Bush. That's Jeb's brother, isn't it? Jeb Bush. They're Ken Bush. Bush.
Are they?
Is that the same Bush from Herbert Walker Bush, former CIA Bush?
So wait, you're telling me that they're going to try to get their third president through? No. Are we really living under that non-transparent of basically a corporate dictatorship?
Yeah, I think you're leaving out the dark horse right now. Mr. Donald Trump. Come on, baby.
Buddy.
That is a serious man right there. You ever seen Celebrity Apprentice? That really happens.
I don't know if I have or not.
That really happens. You don't think a man with that much power and influence can't run this country into the ground just as good as all the rest of them can?
I mean, he's definitely going to have, I guess, I don't know if you call it the best or the worst hairpiece between the group running.
I mean, he's been bankrupt before, but so is D-Dub.
But here's the thing that's so funny. It's like we have a guy that's, basically he's known for other things, but he's turned into a reality TV show star.
Reality.
And now...
You've seen that hair.
He's just putting that up on the entire president. I mean, it's just insane. Let's go ahead and jump the cars. For anybody that wants to call in tonight, please do. Area code 718-717-8296. Area code...
How are y'all doing tonight?
Doing good. How you doing?
Doing pretty well. I'm sorry, I was just listening to y'all, and of course I was listening to everything y'all were having to say, but I wanted to touch base on one of y'all had said, I'm not sure if it was you or the other, about how the American people continue to vote in, these electoral, or these politicians that continuously basically make these bad decisions. In my opinion, unfortunately, I think it's just the American people. I mean, they don't do the research like we do and sit there and listen to the primaries or, who's going to be the Democratic or Republican nominee or even an independent nominee. That's probably why independent nominees don't have a chance. But they just kind of sit back and wait till the actual election comes because they trust the American system. And unfortunately, I think they trust the American system because, one, they're oblivious because they're too sidetracked with our American media, our American entertainment. They really just don't care, and they think that everything is perfectly the way it should be. But they don't do the research. And so if they could, maybe they would, rather, then they would finally start realizing and not be so oblivious on what is going on in the world. I mean, what do y'all think about that?
I think you make some absolutely great points, and I think what you're saying is 100% happening. I do think that people have faith in the system, and they don't believe that this system could or ever would fail us. and they just trust things to, take place, and the right people are going to get there. But at the same time, I think you've overlooked something huge that most people don't want to touch on, and that is, I think, the way a lot of these elections.
Oh yeah, I mean, like y'all were just saying, it's all about money.
But not even that. These elections, the potential for these elections to be rigged is so vast. I mean, we're talking about when Bush beat Gore. I mean, it's common knowledge that Gore won that election, and we're also talking about go even a little bit deeper than there. If you go,
I mean, that goes from national all the way to the local elections.
Absolutely.
From what research.
Absolutely.
And that's another thing that plays as a factor. What I was just saying, how the American people are way too oblivious. It's not that they can't know or they're too dumb. I did call them last week, or I think 2 weeks ago, and I was just completely aggravated with it, what we all were talking about, and just went off, and I completely blame the American people for it. And said that, basically they are too stupid, but I kind of, I rescind that comment, and I understand now, or not understand, I'm just being more, what's the word, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but just more understanding that, yes, it is because they, us as the American people, we believe that we are the number one democracy in the world. We basically created democracy, of course, after the French Revolution, blah, blah, blah. But we just, we sit here on our high horses thinking that we're the greatest country in the world, and there's no way in hell that, our politicians can be screwing us like the way they are. And the majority of them are just completely, it's not that they're oblivious, they're just distracted by what is going on in our culture. And, maybe sometimes I sit here and think, is this the way that it was shaped by the government, or is this the way they just allowed it to happen? I don't know if you blame that on the government, or if you blame that on, capitalism. I have no idea. But
I think it's definitely something that it has turned into over the years, and I think that, it goes back as far as really the beginning of this country. There were entities trying to have the elite running the show, but at the same time, while I do think that the majority of Americans have been dumbed down, and they are more worried about the Kardashian family than they are what's going on in their political sector and their representatives. Here's something that I challenge you to do. I challenge you to go, and everybody out there listening, to look at a documentary called Hacking Democracy and see how easy it is for the electoral system to be rigged from the inside. And, it happened. Wait a second. It happened with Kennedy against Nixon in 1960 for a fact that we know. It also happened with Gore and Bush, we know, in 2000. And then you have the other side of things where we look at Mitt Romney and how the media just tells people what to do and how to vote, because Mitt Romney was getting into debates in 2012, and the media was saying, well, he won all these debates, and he wasn't winning these debates. The media would say he was, but it wasn't happening that way, and no matter who they put up front, the media would turn around and say, well, guess what? It's inevitable. You're going to get Mitt Romney. No matter who's winning this week, you're going to end up with Mitt Romney. And the same exact thing happened in the primaries with Hillary and Obama in 2008. I'm no big fan of Hillary whatsoever, but she destroyed him in all the primary debates, but it was never reported that way. It was always reported as Obama held his own. He did a great job, and it's people...
And he appealed to the people. He fooled them like we have all been fooled ever since FDR. Ever since Woodrow Wilson, in my opinion. But, another statistic I want to touch base on is... I forget the other host's name, I'm sorry, but he had stated how the American people don't, even when, the number one election, the presidential election, not all of the American people show up to vote. Last statistic I had read, if I can remember correctly, and I'm not sure if I'm completely 100% correct on this, but I think it was roughly anywhere from 45 to 50%, to maybe even 55% of Americans that were eligible to vote actually turned out to vote for the American people. And that right there just baffles me. We, as a nation, we have that great, power as a people, but we don't harness that. It's what is everyone else doing? I don't know.
Well, you see what good the vote has gotten us to this point. You see that now.
Exactly.
For the 50 to 55% of the people that came out to vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, here's
And then maybe maybe that's a good thing. Possibly, I have no idea. Apparently, it's not so far. But
absolutely
who
not.
knows? Yeah.
Absolutely not, because the other half of Americans that are legally eligible to vote, that are not voting, have seen through the act and seen through the smoke screen, and those ranks are growing greater and greater and greater. And you'll see it in this.
I agree with you. I wouldn't say it was the other complete 50% of it.
Right.
I mean, I see a lot of when I look at the candidates on both the right and the left.
Right.
And the few that choose to identify in the middle.
It's absolutely disgusting. Well, I tell you what, thank you so much for calling in tonight.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. We look forward to hearing from you again.
No problem. Bye-bye.
So, yeah, absolutely. Like, he hit on some great points, about how it has become this cultural thing, about how we're so distracted. And we had a story up today on antimedia.org about how we're more worried about the FBI researching the St. Louis Cardinals spying on other baseball teams than we are about the FBI spying on us.
Whoa. That's baseball, man. That's an American institution. That's certainly a lot more important than, anything that the, United States is going to find on my cell phone.
But, if you're not doing anything wrong, what do you have to hide?
Yeah, but what is...
Meanwhile, the same government that says that, by the way, will release tons of documents that are completely redacted and there's nothing on them. What if you got nothing to hide?
Absolutely.
What do you care?
And again, because we are paying the American government to do the job that we put them in office, and we pay the salaries for the police officers that are protecting the living hell out of people daily with guns and batons and tasers and so on and so forth. The 12-year-old boy, if you have not seen it, it's been shared on quite a few of the alternative media sites recently. I think Filming Cops was the one that broke it, if I'm not mistaken. The California young 12-year-old boy skateboarding behind a store. Wasn't even out in the parking lot and smashing bottles in there. He was just riding a skateboard like 12-year-old boys do. Tased repeatedly and choked by the police. It's actually on film. It's being widely distributed. And the most important fact in that little case, just for a half second, because I have to talk about it, is the fact that after they had tased this boy repeatedly, had choked him out, and then threw him in the back of the police car, then they turn around to the young men that are standing there, a few of them with their cell phones out. They made each and every one of them, except for the brave, courageous young man that luckily did not erase the video that made it to the internet, made them erase every single bit of the footage. Why did the police do that if they had nothing to hide?
And yet, there are going to be people out there that say the cop was just doing his job.
Shouldn't have
the
resisted.
child, but see, if it's a 12-year-old child getting beat up by the police, it's no longer a child. It's a young man.
According to witnesses, the police officer rolled up to the young man who was skateboarding. No warning, no, you need to not skateboard here, or you're doing something illegal. He just rolls up, opens the door, and tells the kid to get in. And the kid was well within his rights to ask this question, for what?
Did they not have a van or give him candy or something? I mean, I remember growing up saying if a stranger tells you to get in their car.
Particularly if one, I mean, that's a smart little 12-year-old boy. I wouldn't have done it. Then again, of course, if I'd have took off running, I would have been resisting. You know, that still to this day amazes me, that you can get arrested for resisting arrest and not be charged or arrested for anything else.
Because that's what freedom is, though. Don't you understand?
So if I'm not under arrest for anything, then how am I resisting arrest? What are you arresting me for? We're not arresting you for anything.
Have you read 1984? That'll explain everything you need to know, okay? That'll explain everything you need to know. Orwell lays it out, and you'll read that book and go, oh, now I get it.
That is the blueprint that the current United States government in 2015, June 16th, that is the current blueprint under which they operate.
Right. And nobody, like, and the thing is there's a huge part of the population that's completely asleep to what's going on, don't care, they believe what they're told, but there's another part of the population that I believe is awake, and they do understand what's going on, and they do understand that we're living in an Orwellian era, and yet they're too afraid to speak out. They're afraid from the judgment, they're afraid from the peer pressure, they're afraid of being called crazy. And you will find that once you speak out just for what you believe in, it's not to say anything crazy. If you believe it, then own it. Don't worry about other people judging you, because if you're worried about somebody judging you, then what's the point of you believing it? What does it matter if you have the cure for cancer if you're just going to sit on top of it and not tell anybody because you're scared? What good are you doing anybody? It doesn't matter what you believe if you're not willing to stand up for what you believe in. It doesn't matter what you believe.
Well, let's go back to what you just said, that analogy that you gave right there. If you're sitting on top of the cure for cancer and you don't want to say anything about it because you're too scared, well, I'm going to tell you one thing right now. That is a real thing that you're discussing right there. Now, we've already seen it in the medicinal marijuana community, and we've seen all of the new research is coming out, and we still haven't got the one final banner headline that, yes, this is what cures cancer, but we see a lot of people with a lot of different ailments being cured by a simple plant, a plant that grows out of the ground. Not cut, not processed, grows out of the ground, and extract the oil from it, just like we extract oil from vegetables and peanuts and sunflowers and olives and so on and so forth.
But didn't you hear that because people can abuse that plant, then nobody should be treated? It's not like it's a legal drug like Oxycontin. People can't...
Or alcohol.
Yeah, people can't abuse Oxycontin, do they? People don't die from that, do they? Because there's thousands of people dying a day from marijuana. Wait. It's the other way around, isn't it? The legal drugs that the big pharmaceutical companies who are funding these politicians...
There's gateway drugs right there, buddy.
You better believe it, because those are the legal ones that people don't think is wrong. It must be okay because the government gave me permission to use it. A doctor gave it to me.
You know how many people are strung out on heroin right now that got started off from a Lortab 5 prescription just for a little bit of back pain from their doctor? There are so many anecdotes, and those numbers are increasing, daily, exponentially. Just from people, and we're talking about not your normal junkie that, that ne'er-do-well that, is hanging out down at the alley right there, the one slumped over and this, that, and the other. We're talking about normal, everyday people, grandmothers, business people, people of, upstanding pillars of the community, as it were, that are going down the same path. And again, some of them may actually stop off before they get to heroin, but there's other things that, buying illegal prescriptions to, once the Lortab 5s are not doing it, then they give you the 7.5s, and then they give you the 10s, and then you get something a little bit more exotic, then you wind up on Tylox, and then bam, you're on Oxycontin, and then, somebody comes along after you're eating so many Oxycontin, and those are hard to come by these days, too, because there's so much heroin around. Where's that heroin come from, by the way?
A plant. But
no. What region of the world does a lot of that heroin start off in?
It's not the Middle East. It couldn't be Afghanistan, could it?
Yeah, I got poppies.
Now here's a legitimate stat that I would like to know an answer to, and I guarantee you this stat probably doesn't exist. If anybody has this stat, please call in and give it to us. The number of people that have started off smoking marijuana and ended up on heroin, percentage-wise, versus the number of people who started off taking pain pills prescribed by a doctor with the same legally and ended up on heroin. I bet you the percentages would just absolutely blow your mind if I had to guess, because we're talking about things that are similar in nature versus something that it's not similar at all. And you're not going to be sitting here, smoking weed and just say, I can't do it anymore, I'm shooting up. But when you're taking these pain pills and they run out and you've been hooked on it legally, mind you, you got to keep chasing it. I mean, people have never gotten addicted to that stuff ever, but that's what people believe. It's prescribed by a doctor. It must be safe.
Absolutely.
And that goes back to everything that we're talking about is, if somebody, quote unquote, in a position of authority says it's okay, they have my best interest in mind. And I think that's what it falls back to. People have to get over this notion and this piece of fiction make-believe they have in their head that whatever the government does, they have your best interest in mind.
One of my favorite combinations is the person that takes Adderall during the day, speedy all day long, and then they have to take Xanax at night to go to sleep.
Right.
So why do you need either one of them if you're on both of them?
Exactly.
You know how many people I know on that same combination?
But the government knows what's best for you. They wouldn't let doctors prescribe that if it wasn't safe for you.
Absolutely.
They
And
would.
the FDA surely
They
would
wouldn't
approve
have-
such a medication
Right.
that would be habit-forming or damaging to your central nervous system or to your liver, your kidneys, or so on and so forth. You know.
But I tell you what, we've got an article up right now, and I'm not going to get into it much, but it's an article on antimedia.org right now, and I just want to read this quote, and it's about marijuana and, the medical implications of it. And he summed up his argument as saying, I'd rather be illegally alive than legally dead. That's a fantastic quote.
Kids 15 years old.
Right.
Out of the mouths of babes.
And he's experienced Crohn's disease and, a lot of pain, blah, blah, blah. We won't get into it, but that's the world that we're living in. If anybody wants to read more, it's right up now on the antimedia.org in the top headline section. But that's it. Because the government grants you permission to do something, then it's going to be okay. They always have your best interest in mind. It goes back to what the caller was saying earlier about where you've got these two choices. They must be okay because the government's got your best interest in mind. Nobody's ever going to run that doesn't have our best interest in mind. That's not possible. Well, you can't say that because we get the complete dividing lines of people that are hardcore Republicans or hardcore Democrat, and they just see the word Republican, and they're automatically like, this is the most evil person ever, and they see the word Democrat, this is the greatest person ever.
Yep.
They don't know what they stand for. They don't care what they stand for. They see the word Republican or Democrat, and they'll fall it off a cliff. And that's what's happened to this country. We've followed these politicians from these dividing lines off of a cliff. We don't turn to our neighbors for things. We don't turn to our family. We don't turn to ourselves. We want to put everything in the hands of the government to fix all our problems. We expect that the government can do everything for us, and they know better than what we do. They know how to run our lives better than we do. And that's simply not true. Look at what happened with Obamacare. The government's not going to hurt us. This is great. We're all going to get health care. This is fantastic. We're screwing over the insurance companies. Well, guess what? Now y'all legally have to have it. Insurance rates have gone up.
And here's the sick part about all of this when we mention the word Obamacare. Because Obama is not the only sole author of the Obamacare Act. Come on, man.
They put his name, they attached his name to it because it would, think about what Obama had going for him at the time. He just had this tidal wave coming off this massive win over John McCain. They could have literally taken up all the guns from Americans at that point by saying, Obama this or Obama that.
I think a few of our listeners would probably disagree on that one. That would have been a little harder than you think.
But no, I'm going to tell you why I believe you're wrong is because we're looking at the NDAA, and that's interesting. I want to talk a little bit about something that's been attached to the new NDAA here in a second. But as most people know, the provision exists in the NDAA that you can indefinitely detain American citizens. That just passed. That went through a few years ago since Obama's been in office. No big deal. No harm, no foul. His response is, well, I'm not going to use it. If you're not going to use it, what do you need it for? They literally had a law that mirrors taking Jews and putting them in concentration camps. Literally, that mirrors what Hitler did. Indefinitely detain people for absolutely no reason. That is a law that exists. And the thing that's so sick about that is you would think if they're going to start just picking people up off the streets and indefinitely detaining them for whatever reason, why do you need a law for that? Because you're clearly doing something wrong. They went to the extreme of telling you, we can do this. We own you. We control you. We wrote down on a sheet of paper and had a man sign it that we can now legally detain you for no reason.
Well, that was part of the initial Patriot Act. Let's go ahead and get that straight right now.
Absolutely.
If you look very closely at the Patriot Act, you would have seen that very in bold print. And yes, it's still intact in the new Freedom Act.
Oh.
The Act of Freedom.
Well, buddy, don't you feel like you get all the freedoms in the world when you're indefinitely detained? That must feel
Freedom
like
straight up
that
my
must.
ass.
Do you feel more like a patriot or feel more like you have freedom? I don't know. What would you feel more like?
I don't feel either.
I just know I'd want to find the nearest flag and salute it when I was indefinitely detained, and thank all my congressmen for standing up and voting the right way.
We love you, Chris Kyle.
Man.
Freedom.
So, speaking of the NDAA, there has the Senate just passed an amendment to attach to the brand new National Defense Authorization Act, and it's going to outlaw many forms of torture, including waterboarding, rectal feeding, mock executions, hooding prisoners, sexual humiliation, in any sector of the United States government. The people that put this forward is going to sound very bizarre, and you're going to immediately think there's definitely something odd going on here. It's John McCain and Dianne Feinstein.
Wow, that's strange bedfellows.
It is, but you have to remember that John McCain was a POW for years.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's weird because this is the same man that was all about, invading Hong Kong when they had Snowden. So he's clearly off his rocker, and he's clearly the most anxious to go to war than anybody in Congress. At least vocally, he's the most anxious to go to war. So what do you think? Is it even going to matter that they pass a law saying that they can't torture anybody now? Is that going to change anything? Is it going to stop anything?
That just means we're going to see a lot more documents that come out from the United States governments with a lot more black marks on them.
Oh, absolutely. But see, if it's against the law, and I guarantee you there's so much of this going on black sites, okay? And these black sites that do exist around the world, who's filling out paperwork for this stuff?
Well, you can go online and watch the video from the black sites because the government's going to show you exactly what's... Oh, wait a minute. That's not real. Never mind. Yeah, black site means exactly that. You are pretty much taken away and nobody hears from you for a good long while.
Well,
and then whatever happens, happens.
At the beginning of the year.
I'm amazed that as much information has come out. Think about what we already know about what torture, forms of torture they've used. Think about what we still don't know. That's still documents that still have black marks all over them that'll be declassified in 12, 15 years from now.
If they ever become declassified.
If they ever. Already what I've already heard, sexual torture, U.S. soldiers doing some very, very nasty
to children,
violence.
To children in front of their parents.
To children.
Yeah,
children.
Yeah.
The U.S. troops that you hold so near and dear, that's what your military is actually really being used for. Now, I'm not saying that every military person that serves, and there's quite a few great people that have served this country for a lot of really horrible reasons, I might add, and there's been quite a few of them that have woke up to that, and our veterans are treated horribly, absolutely horribly.
Yeah.
When the government's done and used them up, they just toss them aside like an old dirty rag.
Yeah.
Go to a VA hospital sometime and just talk to the folks that are hanging out there. Just trying to get medical care from conditions that were thrust upon them when they were sent off to fight these bullshit wars.
They expect them to do these horrible things, and they send them back over here, and it's like, well,
half of them they pin a badge on them and say, "Okay, yeah, now you can do this to American citizens. Don't you worry, we got your ass on this. You get a couple weeks off if you shoot one of them. Don't you worry, we'll get you out of it."
Well, speaking of that, and the whole black site thing and the whole NDAA thing, I know that there's a lot of people out there that, first off, the first reaction is, that's not true. That's what people think. That's not true. That's crazy conspiracy. You've been listening to too much Jesse Ventura, whatever it is you listen to. And then you do your own research and you find out that's 100% true, that they do have that written, that they can indefinitely detain citizens. And then people justify it by saying, but they're never going to do it here. That's never going to happen here. They may use that law for maybe a bad guy overseas who defected and he's a traitor, and they may have to do so, but it's never going to happen here. And then we have the situation at the beginning of the year in Chicago come out that was broke by The Guardian originally. We had the big hashtag storm, hashtag Gitmo to Chicago. I even ended up with an image I made on the cover of The Guardian over the whole thing. But black sites in Chicago, Illinois, where people were being indefinitely detained without charge for no reason and were eventually being released, never knowing why they were there, not charged with anything. Nobody knew where they were. They just disappeared for a few days. It's already happening here.
Oh, those black sites are still open, by the way.
And why would they ever not be open? Because they're not held accountable for anything. They're not held accountable for anything. And I'll tell you what, the whole story about Chicago came out, but you would be a fool to believe that that's not going on in other major cities across the United States of America. I'm not naive enough to think, well, yeah, Chicago's the one bad apple, just the Chicago PD. Sorry, I didn't wake up yesterday. The things that you're most terrified of, but you think will never, ever, ever happen in this country, are the things that are already happening.
How many people have been shot in Chicago, a city that, mind you, has the toughest, the strictest gun laws in the nation? How many people, just so far this year, June 16th, we're halfway through the year, how many people have been shot?
1,133 people have been shot in the city of Chicago.
The strictest gun laws in the nation. How many people is that again? This is only June, mind you.
1,133, and that's with 195 homicides. 195 homicides. Okay, and as bad as, like, all these stats, they're mind-blowing. Because I saw somebody earlier today on social media point out that, we're sitting here talking about Saudi Arabia beheading 100 people, which is absolutely horrible. I mean, nobody's going to argue that it's not horrible. But we're talking about 100 people beheaded by somebody that has a country that no freedoms, by human rights organizations, zero freedoms, and just horrible, horrible conditions. 100 people have been executed. The police in the United States of America this year alone have killed 522 people.
Wow.
5 times as many people.
We're on pace to break 1,000 this year.
Have been killed by police officers in this country this year than Saudi Arabia has beheaded. That's really scary. And we talk about all the violent crime and all the violent murder in Chicago. 195 homicides versus 522. Now, if there weren't police, would that 195 be a lot higher? I guarantee you it would. I'm not a fool. I guarantee you it would. But when were some of those 522, were they probably put themselves in a position, where that's what happened to them? I'm sure quite a few of them were that way. The problem is we know for a fact that not that entire 522 people did something to warrant death.
Absolutely.
And not only is it excused, the officers aren't held accountable.
And in most cases, the people that they shoot weren't even armed. Were armed with nothing.
Right.
Nothing.
And
zero.
And the terrifying thing, and the first reaction that people have is to just, it's 100% the cop this, the cop that, the cop this. And while I agree with that, and the cops should be punished right away for what they did, we're missing the bigger point and the bigger problem here. Because if a cop does something wrong and he's held accountable for it, then, well, that's just what happened. That's human nature, and nobody's perfect, and that's the way the world is. Sorry, that is. I wish it wasn't that way, but it is. Yeah. But we're dealing with, because cops are getting away with it, the entire justice system has failed us. And we have a problem way bigger than one cop that's shooting unarmed people. We have a problem way bigger than that. Because the Justice Department is just allowing it to happen. And then you have to start reading into what's really going on. Why would they let that happen? That goes back into what we were talking about earlier. The government would never do anything that wasn't in my best interest. They wouldn't, so this cop must be innocent because they wouldn't let him go.
And luckily we have situations like what's going on in Cleveland right now with community leaders there We've spoken about this the past couple broadcasts. The Tamir Rice shooting, 12-year-old boy playing in a public park. Police roll up on him, give him a quick verbal command, and within seconds he's dead. Seconds. I'm talking about just a scant few seconds, dead. And now the community got sick of it, got sick of the inaction. Prosecutor's office went ahead and hurried up and declared that there was no wrongdoing there. And now the community has stepped in and has went ahead and filed charges against a police officer. The police officer has been indicted. More of that needs to be happening right now. These
does.
are our employees.
It absolutely does. But if this was the system people had convinced themselves that we lived in, that would never have to happen. And before we can... You're never going to cure a disease until you diagnose the disease. And you understand, how do you do that? You recognize the symptoms of the illness. And we've got symptoms all around us of what's going on here. And people want to ignore the signs. And they just want to put on blinders and look straight ahead like nothing's happening. This couldn't be happening. It's no way this could be happening. I was told we live in the greatest country in the world. There's no way all these injustices could be taking place. There's no way my tax dollars could be paying for that.
Absolutely.
But in reality, when you pay attention to what's going on, it is happening. There are people being killed around the world and have been for decades upon decades with your tax dollars. You go to work every day, and a percentage of that goes to kill someone.
And a large percentage of it goes to the corporate interests.
You better
that
believe
pay
it.
To get those people killed.
You better believe it. Corporate subsidies, corporate welfare.
Hillary will tell you how to get rid of the competition. Yeah, I said it. Yeah, everybody's all worried about her emails. A lot of folks need to go look a little bit further back at the Clintons, back in their Arkansas years, and the wake of dead. The wake of the dead, the trail of the dead that led all the way up to the White House. Yeah, that's some scary times to live in.
That's some right-wing conspiracy.
And then, of course,
that's what they tell
the Bushes
you.
And the Bushes have no blood on their hands.
No.
Yeah. I don't know if there's a contest. I think the Bushes win that one hands down.
Look, you can be a Republican, you can be a Democrat. The color of the blood on your hand is still going to run red.
Absolutely, every single time.
But nobody can accept that their candidate would lie to them. Nobody. The fact that anybody in this country, anybody, would vote for Hillary Clinton or Jeb Bush under any circumstance. I'm talking about people that have completely bought into the system and are still looking for a politician to save them. Even those people.
It ain't Donald Trump.
How anybody could vote for Jeb Bush or Hillary Clinton is mind-boggling. I mean, it makes me want to ram my head through the wall and give myself a concussion because maybe that brain damage will help me understand where people are coming from, that they can fix their mouth to say the words, I'm going to vote for Jeb Bush or Hillary Clinton.
What about Bernie Sanders? How do you feel about old Bernie?
I'll get to that in just a second. I'm going to go ahead and...
Saved by the bell.
Area code 339, welcome to Anti-Media Radio. Tell us your name and where you're calling from tonight.
Hey, I'm calling from Massachusetts, and my friend told me to call this number. What are we talking about?
Oh, man, we're hitting on...
Like a dream.
Talking about all kinds of things going on in the world.
All right, so what exactly are we... hold on. Here, let me turn this down.
What you jamming to there? I hear some music in the background.
Yeah, so like, the thing I have about the problem I have with this is it the gelatinous rain that was spread over a 20-mile radius that they lost all of the samples from, or is it the geoengineering, or is it that the president is already pre-proposed, or I'm not sure. Is this just another red flag and I just got busted and you're here to send me to the pit?
Yeah, I absolutely don't know myself.
No, but really, like, what is this? Somebody just told me to call this number, and they said that I would encounter somebody who had something to say about what was really going on in this world, whether it be chemtrails, and I know this sounds crazy, but I shouldn't say chem, I should say geoengineering, or Agenda 21, we're going to go all, or the we can't even go to the, what is it, oh God, help me.
Well, I tell you what.
The Canadian, oh God. You know what? It almost goes without saying, so you must be beholden to someone, so who is that?
Who am I beholden to?
No, yes. So that I guess that would be the ultimate question.
I can honestly tell.
But the Minister of Defense of Canada came clean with the UFOs, so let's go with that. That way we don't have to.
I actually saw that recently. That was that. I had this talk with somebody earlier today. It's actually a friend of mine, and there is a large amount of evidence from a lot of different places. Snowden kind of talked about it a little bit too. And again,
I don't care about him because he's going to be the pariah that he's the guy they threw under the bus.
Oh yeah,
I get
definitely.
Like when the bankers went free. Before, I just want to give you, just so you know what I'm talking about. The bankers went free. They're not going to do any time. They knew what they were doing. They raped the country. All right. So, like, without me saying it, we see the demon, and we want to drag him into the light. So how are we going to subtly do that through your exposure? How are we going to do that with what you can't do that, right? Like, ultimately, this is an exercise in futility. And I don't mean to, I don't want to go there. Believe me, I don't want to go there. But there's that part of me that truly sees it that way.
Yeah, I think absolutely that makes sense. Yeah. But see, at the same time, what you have to understand is that if you just completely give up and just say, first off, you call in and talk about UFOs or whatever you're talking about in Leon Panetta's speech or whatever it is, who cares? What does that have to do with your daily life? What does that have to do with what's going on with you and your family today? It has nothing to do with it whatsoever. And people don't want to get onto these distractions and talk about these absolutely, wild things. I don't know if they're true. I don't care. I don't care.
I don't know. I kind of like the whole idea of UFOs. I mean,
I don't care. I could literally care less. There's never been anything I could care less about.
Yeah.
Because what does it have to do with me? What does it have to do with my family? What does it have to do with what's going on in the world? If somebody's interested in talking about that, David Icke has a program. You can go listen and talk about lizards all you want. But my goal,
coast to coast, AM.
Yeah. Better believe it. My goal is to talk about what's really happening in this country and what the corporate media refuses to talk about.
Well, and I don't see this as an exercise in futility at all, because any time that we can communicate among one another, that we can share ideas that are definitely not being widespread in our spoon-fed, corporate media. I think that, any time that we educate or at least point out something that you may have missed before, something that is definitely being, the powers that be are definitely trying to obscure the truth about. No, I don't see that as futility in the slightest. I really don't.
No, absolutely. I feel like if that's completely, ridiculous and pointless, then why are people, why do people go to school to get an education? Because you need to have education to survive in this world and to get through it. And if you don't understand history and you don't understand the present and what's presently going on around you, then you're just going to get bulldozed over.
Absolutely.
And it's going to happen to you and your loved ones, and you're not going to even see it coming. And the next thing you know, you're going to have somebody knocking on your door because it's going to get to that level, and it's already crept into our lives in the form of the Fourth Amendment's completely gone. It's been completely eroded. That doesn't exist anymore because the government can spy on you through whatever different means
the
possible.
Fourth Amendment ended with the Patriot Act. This is not anything new either.
No, it's not anything new. But people get more.
It's just now being talked about. It's something that we need to revisit constantly. And all you have to do is look around. Look around you. Your Fourth Amendment rights are gone.
And this is how screwed that we are, though, is because when they passed the Freedom Act, a couple weeks back, the media and even alternative media like RT, I saw them do it, ran it as the Freedom Act has gone through. They've stopped the Patriot Act finally, the big bad Patriot Act. Everything's going to be better. It's winding down finally. No, it's not. They put it in the hands of private entities. They're still spying on you the same.
Absolutely. And now they don't have to do near as much heavy lifting, and they can devote a lot more time instead of data collection, which is now up to the Googles and the Charter Internet and the AT&Ts of the world. Now they can devote more time and more manpower to looking through every single one of those emails, listening to every single one of those sampling of calls. Come on now.
When was the last time the government implemented anything ever, then stopped it?
Yeah.
They don't. They may change the name of it and pretend they're doing something else, but once something's in effect, it's in effect.
Well, and that's why I encourage every single American to at least take 1 or 2 dick pics a day just to make sure that the United States can see the whole thing.
Man.
I'm going to go to the bathroom and do that here in just a minute.
Oh,
make sure
please don't.
See it. Yeah.
Do it when you're out of the studio. But what I don't understand is how Americans, and then you've got what we just had, is people want to sit here and focus about aliens or there's chemtrails coming to kill us or whatever. Let me tell you something. You're going to be dead by the hands of the government way before you're going to be dead by a chemtrail.
Or a laser gun from a Martian.
Or a laser gun from a Martian. And if that is happening, there's nothing you're going to be able to do about it anyway. So who cares? Who cares? It's the most pointless topics to me. When there's real issues facing our country and the people in our country and the oppression that Americans are facing, we're sitting here talking about 522 Americans dead by the police. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. Now, as far as the geoengineering thing goes, whatever, the government does geoengineering, that's no big secret. They change the weather. Is it nefarious or not? I have no idea. I'm not a scientist. And most people on the internet don't know either. But what I do know is there's 522 dead bodies from police officers this year. What I do know is that we're bombing countries all around the world and that our drones are killing innocent children. I do know that.
In the name of freedom.
Yeah, I do know that every communication that I make is being completely spied on and that there is no such thing as privacy anymore.
In the name of freedom.
And in the name of security, I do know that if I go to the airport, I have to walk through a little line, and a man with some blue little gloves gets to rub me up and down if he wants to, because...
In the name of freedom.
So instead of going off on these, diverse diatribes about green people coming down from the sky, let's focus on what's here in front of us, and let's deal with that. Shane, you got any few words before we go?
Well, really quick, going back to that one last time, I can understand where all of this would be fascinating and would be cool if we had aliens and it'd be cool this, that, and the other. Again, it is more distracting. It's something else to think about instead of the actual bearing down of the United States government on the American citizens that they're supposed to serve. Serve. They're employees, people.
Absolutely. Join Nick tomorrow night on UCY.TV, and I will be back with Shannon on Thursday. Anti-Media Radio. This is SM Gibson out.
Peace.
Go and let it blow through the I'ma let them know, no, through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo.